Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet. And we put it that way because a lot of diversity people never address the issue of or include people with disabilities in their world. And some of us confront that. And I specifically take the approach you either are inclusive or you're not. There's no partial inclusion. So we put inclusion at the first part of Unstoppable Mindset, then diversity, and the unexpected, which is everything that doesn't have anything to do with inclusion or diversity, which is most things, but it makes it kind of fun. Anyway, we're glad that you're here wherever you happen to be listening or watching the podcast. Today we get to chat with Jennifer Shaw. Jennifer is an author, and she's been a closet writer part of her life, but she came out of the closet and has been publishing, which is cool. And she has a lot of other stories to tell, unstoppable in a lot of different ways. So I am sure we're going to have a lot of fun talking today, and I hope that you'll learn some interesting and relevant concepts to your world. So Jennifer, thanks for being here and for being on Unstoppable Mindset. We really appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, why don't we start at the beginning, and why don't you tell us about kind of the early Jennifer?
So I was very much of an introvert, very shy. I didn't really know how to talk to people, kind of was trying to figure things out, and was having a hard time figuring things out, and became more of a misfit. And I needed a way of dealing with, my misunderstandings. Became very much a people watcher, and for a while that worked, but I needed an outlet in order to be able to analyze and sort out my ideas. And then my mom bought me a typewriter because, I'm that old. And I started
I
writing.
know about typewriters.
Yeah, yeah. And I started writing as a hobby, and then it became a passion and obsession. Now it's just cheaper than therapy. And in 2019, I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, which makes total sense looking back at all the things that I used to do and the way I felt. It makes sense now. And I thought, I never shared any of my stories, but I've been writing by that point for over 30 years. And I thought, well, maybe writing is my special interest. And I got brave, and I sent off my first book in my series that's now published, because I just finished that one at the time, to an editor. And I'm thinking, well, the worst they can say is it sucks. And my editor came back and said, this doesn't suck. You should publish. So 2 years later, I did.
Cool. Well, so, of course, one of the big questions, one of the most important ones of the whole day is, do you still have the typewriter?
No,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
know. I don't know what happened to mine either. It has gone away somewhere.
Mine was really cool. It was a plug-in electrical one. It had a whiteout strip and everything.
Mm.
I gave a presentation for grade 5 classroom, and I told them I got started on a typewriter, and then I was going into how I got published and different aspects of fiction writing and plots and character development, that stuff. And after an hour and a half, the only questions they had to ask was, "What's a
What's a
typewriter?"
typewriter?
Like, of
Well,
course.
of course, if you really want to delve into history, it'd be fascinating to learn the history of the typewriter. Do you know it?
No, I do not.
So among other things, one of the first ways a typewriter was developed and used was there was a countess in Europe who had a husband who didn't pay much attention to her, so she had a lover, and she wanted to be able to communicate with her lover. She is blind, and so she couldn't just have people write down messages and relay them and all that. So somebody invented this machine where she could actually create messages with a keyboard, a typewriter, and then seal them, and she could get her ladies in waiting or whoever to give them to her lover. That was her way to communicate with him without her husband finding out.
Yeah. So the ultimate note taker.
The ultimate note taker. I learned to type. Well, I started to learn at home, and then between 7th and 8th grade, I took some summer school courses just because it was something to do. And one of them was typing. And I didn't even think about the fact that all the other kids in the class kept complaining because they didn't know what letters they were pushing because there were no labels on the keys, which
Yep.
didn't bother me a bit. And so I typed. And then I don't know. I assume it still is required out here, but in the eighth grade, you have to pass a test on the U.S. Constitution. And for me to be able to take the test, they got the test transcribed into Braille, and then I brought my typewriter in and typed the answers.
Nice.
I guess I don't know why they didn't just have me speak to someone, but I'm glad they did it that way. So it was fine. I'm sure it was a little bit noisy for the other kids in the class, but the typewriter wasn't too noisy. But yeah, I typed all the answers and went from there. So that was kind of cool. But I don't remember what happened to the typewriter over the years.
I think it gave way to keyboards and online writing programs.
Yeah, I'm sure that it did, but I don't know what happened to my typewriter nevertheless. But oh well. But yeah, it did, and keyboards and everything else. But having used the typewriter, I already knew how to type except for learning a few keys. Well, even mine was a manual typewriter, and then there was a Braille typewriter created by IBM. It's called the Model D, and it was like a regular typewriter, except instead of letters on the keys that went up and struck the paper, it was actually Braille characters, and it struck hard enough that it actually created Braille characters on the paper. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, I'm sure it all just kind of went to keyboards and everything else, and then there were word processors, and now it's just all computers.
Yep. Yep. We're a digital age nowadays.
We are very much a digital age. So you went to regular school and all that.
Yep. And I was never it was never noticed that I was struggling because for the most part women tend to mask it. That's why fewer women are diagnosed than men. I just internalized it and I came up with my own strategies to deal with things. And unless you were disruptive to class or you had some sort of learning difficulties and stuff, you never really got any attention. So I just sort of disappeared because I never struggled in school and I was just the shy one. Um, yeah, taught myself how to communicate with other kids by taking notes of conversations. I have notebooks where I'm like, okay, so and so said this. This was the answer. Okay, there was a smile. So that must be what I need to say when somebody says that. So I developed a script for myself
Mm.
in order to be able to socialize.
And that was kind of the way you masked it, or that was part of masking it.
That was part of masking it. I spent a lot of time people watching so that I could blend in a lot more, kind of trying to figure it out. I felt like I was an alien dropped off on this planet and somebody forgot to give me the script. And, I was trying to figure things out as I went.
Well, maybe that's actually what happened, and they'll come back and pick you up someday.
Maybe.
But then you can beat up on them because they didn't leave a script.
Yeah. You guys left me here with no instructions.
Or you were supposed to create the instructions because they were clueless. There's that possibility.
Maybe I was like, patient X or something.
The advanced model, as it were.
Yeah.
So you went through school, you went through high school and all that. You went to college?
I did. Yes. Yeah. I went through, I was going to be a teacher, but they were doing the teacher strike at that time, that I was doing my observation practicum. And I was like, I don't know if that's something I want to go into. I'm glad I didn't. Instead, I had an interest in psychology and I took some psychology classes and loved them. It intrigues me how the mind works. But I ended up going into a trade school. I went to in Alberta. It's called NATE, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, and I became an X-ray technologist.
Ah,
And I worked in that field for many years.
did you enjoy it?
I loved it. I loved that I
Well,
didn't have to, yes, you have to work in an environment where you got other people there, but you can still work independently.
yeah,
And I loved that. And I love this. I've always been very much a science and math geek. Numbers, I have a propensity for numbers and then science and math just, they were fun.
yeah. Well, I agree, having a master's degree in physics, and I have a secondary teaching credential. So I appreciate what you're saying. It's interesting. I would think also as an X-ray technician, although you had to give people instructions as to where to position themselves and all that, it wasn't something where you had to be very conversationally intensive necessarily.
Yeah, and I mean, people didn't, I didn't spend a lot of time with each patient. And I was able to mask a lot of my awkwardness and stuff in short bursts. So nobody really noticed, and I had fun with the science part of it, and yeah, it was never noticed. Although the social aspects, interacting with coworkers and stuff, was a bit difficult for
Hmm.
me after, outside of the actual tasks. That was interesting.
I have a friend who just recently graduated from school learning to be an x-ray technician. And um, I tease her all the time and tell her, you got to really be careful, though, because those x-rays can slip out of your grasp if you're not careful. You just never know when one's going to try to sneak away. So you better keep an eye on them and slap it when it does.
Yeah, yeah, go catch them.
I sent her an email last week saying, I just heard on the news an x-ray escaped from your hospital. What are you doing to catch it? They're fun.
Yeah.
But but you did all of that, and then so how long were you an X-ray technician?
A little over 10 years.
Hmm.
I retired once my kids were born.
Okay, you had a more well, a bigger and probably more important job to do that way.
Yes. And I mean, like at the time, we didn't know that both my boys would be, diagnosed on the spectrum. Both of them have anxiety and ADHD. But I was struggling with work and being a mom. And in all honesty, it was going to cost me more for childcare than it was for me to just stay home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when they were diagnosed, what did your husband think?
My husband he says, okay, okay, I get it. Yeah, I can see those things and stuff like that. And I know from my perspective, because both my boys went through the ADOS assessment, my thoughts were, those are the things you're looking for? Because I've done those my whole life. And then so like my oldest was diagnosed in like June or July, and I received my diagnosis that September. And then my littlest guy was diagnosed the following year.
You went through the assessment, and that's how you discovered it.
Yep.
So how old were you when they found it?
Ooh, I don't know if I want to give ages. I was just under 40.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked was, as we talked a little bit about before we actually started the recording, I've had a number of people on the podcast who learned that they were on the spectrum. They were diagnosed later in life. I've talked to people who were 40 and even, I think, one or two above. But it just is fascinating to learn how many people actually were diagnosed later in life. And I know that part of it has to do with the fact that we've just gotten a lot smarter about autism and ADHD and so on, which helps. So I think that makes a lot of sense, that you can understand why people were diagnosed later in life. And in every case, what people have said is that they're so relieved. They have an answer. They know,
Yes.
and it makes them feel so much better about themselves.
Yeah. I know for myself, once I was diagnosed, I've never really kept it a secret. I've given myself permission to ask questions if I'm confused. And then it opens up the doors for other people. Like, and I will tell them, it's like some things I don't understand. Like, I don't understand sarcasm. It's difficult. I can give it. I don't understand when somebody's being sarcastic to me. And there's some idioms and jokes they way over my head. So I'm giving myself permission to ask if I'm confused, because otherwise, how will I know?
Yeah. Um, it's pretty fascinating, and people deal with it in different ways. It's almost like being dyslexic, the same sort of concept. You're dealing with something where it's totally different, and you may not even understand it at first. But so many people who realize they're dyslexic or have dyslexia find ways to deal with it,
Oh yeah.
and most people never even know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've like not this year, but within the last couple of years, I've been diagnosed with dyslexia as well, and then come to find out that my father had it as well, but he just never mentioned it, just never came up.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But the human psyche and the human body are very malleable, and we can get creative and deal with a lot of stuff. But I think the most important thing is that you figure out and you learn how to deal with it, and you don't make it something that is a negative in your life. It's the way you are.
Mhm.
I've talked many times to people, and of course, it comes from me in part from being in the World Trade Center. Don't worry about the things you can't control. And the fact is that autism is there, you're aware of it, and you deal with it. And
Yeah.
maybe the day will come when we can learn to control it. But now, at least you know what you're dealing with, and that's the big issue.
Yeah, and I think it like you've hit it on the nail on the head is like the reason so many adults are being diagnosed is because we know more about it. I distinctly remember somebody asking me shortly after I was diagnosed, and they asked me specifically, "Oh, what's it like to be autistic?" And I was like, "I don't know. What's it like to not be? It's all I know. So you tell me what it's like to not be, and I can tell you what it's like to be." So it's not something you can really,
Yeah.
people just can't experience it, I guess.
Well, and people ask me a lot, what's it like to be blind? What is it like that you just live in the dark? Well, I don't live in the dark. And
No.
that's something that is so unfortunate that we believe that eyesight's the only game in town, or most people do. And the reality is, blindness isn't about darkness. So I don't see. All right. The problem with most people is they do see, and that doesn't work for them when suddenly the power goes out and you don't have lights anymore.
Yeah,
Why do you
exactly.
distinguish one from the other? It's so unfortunate that we do that. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, we collectively haven't taught ourselves to recognize that everyone has gifts and we need to allow people to manifest their gifts and not negate them and not demean the people just because they're different than us.
Yeah. And I know I've had people tell me it's like, "Oh, well, you don't look autistic." And I'm like, I don't know what you would expect me to look like, but I've honestly tried really hard not to think of the autism and the ADHD. I tried really hard not to look at it as a disability in my own life. I've looked at it as it's just my brain is wired differently, and I've
Yeah.
explained this to my boys. It's our minds are always open. We can't filter anything that's coming in, and it's like our computer. Our brain. If you imagine our brain as being a computer, we've got every possible tab open trying to perform a million different tasks. We got music playing here, a video playing here. We're trying to search for this file. We can't find anything. And then every now and then it just becomes very overwhelming and we get the swirly wheel of death and we have to restart.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we can multitask like nobody's business until then.
Well, and the reality is most people can learn to do it, although focusing on one thing at a time is always better anyway. But still, I hear what you're saying. My favorite story is a guy wanted to sell me life insurance when I was in college. And I knew at the time that people who were blind or had other disabilities couldn't buy life insurance because the insurance companies decided that we're a higher risk. It
Yeah.
turns out that they weren't making that decision based on any real evidence or data. They just assumed it because that's the way the world was. And eventually that was dealt with by law. But this guy called up one day and he said, I want to sell you life insurance. Well, I thought I'd give him a shot at it. So I invited him over and he came at 3 in the afternoon. And I didn't tell him in advance I was blind. So I go to the door with my guide dog at the time, Holland, and I opened the door and he said, Oh, I'm looking for Mike Hingson. And I said, I'm Mike Hingson. You are? I'm Michael Hingson. What can I do for you? Well, you didn't sound blind on the telephone. And I'm still wondering, what in the heck does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just, I think, it's a lack of understanding and the inability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Well, I think we have the ability, but we just don't. We don't learn how to use it. But you're right. It's all about education. And I think personally that all of us are teachers or should be or can be. And so I choose not to take offense when somebody says you don't sound blind or makes other kinds of comments. I may push a little hard, but I can't be angry at them because I know that it's all about ignorance and they just don't know. And we as a society don't teach, which we should do more of.
Yeah. I know that once I made, like I posted on my, would talk to my friends and stuff about the fact that I have autism and that I'm learning about it myself as well. I've had a lot of people come to me and ask me, it's like, well, what did you notice? How did you find out? And I think I might be on the spectrum. And and it's amazing how many people came out of the woodwork with queries about, questions. And I was like, this is awesome. I can answer questions and educate.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. And the only way we can really learn and deal with some of the stuff is to have a conversation and to have conversations with each other and be included in the conversation. And that's where it gets really comfortable or uncomfortable is that people don't want to include you. Oh, I could end up like that person, or that person just clearly isn't as capable as I because they're blind or they have autism. Well, that's just not true.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge to deal with. Well, here's a question for you. What do you think is the biggest barrier that people have or that they impose on themselves? And how do you move past it?
And I think that the biggest barrier that people pose on themselves is doubting whether or not they're worthwhile.
Mm.
And I know I did that for many years. And like I said, it wasn't until I received my diagnosis that I thought, maybe, I won't know unless I try. So I got out of my comfort zone and I surpassed my doubt and I tried. And then I come to find out that, okay, I should publish. And I've had some, I've had a lot of fun doing that. And I've seen some success in that as well.
One of my favorite quotes goes back to the original Star Wars movie Yoda, who
Mhm.
said, "There is no try. Do or do not. Don't
Yeah.
try."
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. Do it. That's why I also totally decided in the past to stop using the word failure because
Mhm.
failure is such an end all inappropriate thing. All right, so something didn't work out. The real question, and most of us don't learn to do it, although some of us are trying to teach them, but the biggest question is why did this happen? What do I do about it? And we don't learn how to be introspective and analyze ourselves about that. I wrote a book that was published last year called Live Like a Guide Dog, True Stories from a Blind Man and His Dogs about being brave, overcoming adversity, and moving forward in faith. And it's all about teaching people from lessons I learned from my dogs about how to control fear and how to really step back when things happen and analyze what you do, what you fear, what you're about, and how you deal with it. But there's no such thing as failure. It's just, okay, this didn't work out right. Why? Why was I afraid? Or why am I afraid now? And what do I do about it? And we just don't see nearly as much analytical thinking on those kinds of subjects as we should.
Yeah, wasn't there a quote somewhere? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Edison, maybe, that he didn't fail 99 times. He found 99 times how not to do it.
Right.
And he just kept going and going until he got it right.
Yeah. The other one I really like is the quote from Einstein that the definition of insanity is trying the same thing every time and expecting something different to happen.
I think they said that at my graduation from high school. If you do what you did, you'll get what you got.
Yeah. And you can decide to look for alternatives and look for ways to do it better.
Hmm. Yep.
But it is I think I don't know if it was Edison, but I'm going to assume it was who said that. But I think you're right, and it certainly makes a lot of sense.
Yes. Yeah. And I've tried to live by embracing, because I've told this to my kids as well, and I've embraced the idea that, we learn better from our mistakes than we do from the things we did right.
Hmm. Although we could learn if we really thought about it when we do something right, and we go back and look at it and say, what could I have done to even make that better? And we usually don't do that. Well, that worked out well, so I don't have to worry about that. Well,
Exactly. We
we
don't have
should.
regrets at 2020 looking back and saying, well, what would we have done if this had happened? We just sort of stop. It's like when you're looking for your keys in your house, once you find them, you stop looking. You don't keep looking for possible places it could have been. You just stop the journey.
Or you don't look at why did I put them there? That's not where I usually put them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when you discovered that you were on the spectrum, what did your husband think about that?
He thought it made sense.
He said
Although
that explains a lot about you.
yeah, a little bit. But I have a feeling he might be on the spectrum as well.
Oh,
If not autistic, he might be ADHD because he has a lot of the same traits as me. But he says, yeah, it's kind of not worth going and getting it checked out and stuff like that. So,
mm, well, until he wants to, then that probably makes sense.
and there's no
And
reason to
there's no
pressure
reason.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
things go well, and that's the big important thing. But you look at life, you look at what's going on, and you look at how you can change what you need to change and go forward.
Exactly.
So, tell me about your writing. You have been writing a series. What did you do before the series? What was sort of the first things that you wrote that were published?
I wrote a short story for in a classroom assignment. My teacher published it. I wrote a couple poems. I had a different teacher publish those. But the series that I've written is kind of my first foray into publishing and stuff. And then just prior to that, it was just writing stories for myself or writing scenes that came to mind that I wanted to explore. And a lot of them had to do with characters overcoming adversity because that's how I felt that was what was going on in my life.
Ah, and it was.
Mhm.
So, what's the series about?
So it's magic fantasy, action adventure, some supernatural suspense kind of all sprinkled in for good measure because I get bored. Um, the
Okay.
gist of my series is there's our world, our time, coexisting magical realm, but there's a veil that separates us. And we can't see across this veil because we don't have magic, but these creatures that do can and have, and they've been the source of inspiration for our fairy tales and monster stories. And then my main character, a young man by the name of Callum Walker, is born with the ability to use magic. He doesn't know why, he's trying to make the most of it. We do learn why as we go through the series, but he doesn't know. And because he has magic, he's able to cross this veil into this magical realm and he's learning about this world, he's learning about the beings in it, adventures ensue, and we follow him through the series trying to figure out as he's trying to figure out who he is, where he belongs because he's too magic for here but too
Hmm.
human for there, and then master these abilities to survive.
So, has he figured out an answer to the question of why or where?
Not yet, no.
Not
We get
yet.
little answers as we go, but he's learning more. Mostly, it's he's learning to accept himself and to start to trust and open up. And instead of thinking that there must be something wrong with him and that's why he has these abilities, he starts to think, okay, well, what can I do with these abilities and stuff? So, in a lot of ways, his journey mirrors mine.
Well, and he's asking questions, and as you ask questions, that's the most important thing. You're willing to consider and explore.
Absolutely.
So, are these self-published, or does a publisher publish them?
I'm indie published through a press company called Maverick First Press Inc.
Have any of the books been converted to audio?
Not yet, but I am looking into it.
Some of us would like that. I do read Braille, and I could get a book if in electronic form, and I could probably get it converted. But it'll be fun if you do get them into an audio format. I love magic and fantasy, and especially when it
Like,
isn't too dark and too heavy. I've read Stephen King, but I've gotten away from reading a lot of Stephen King just because I don't think I need things to be that dark. Although I am very impressed by what he does and how he comes up with these ideas, I'll never know.
yeah, I know. I don't think that it's as dark as Stephen King, but it's certainly a little darker and older than Harry Potter series. So it's
Well, it's
somewhere right in
okay.
the middle.
Yeah. Well, and Harry Potter has been another one that has been certainly very good and has encouraged a lot of kids to read
Yes.
and adults.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't all have to be middle grade students to enjoy a middle grade book.
Right. Oh, absolutely true. Well, so um, if you had to give one piece of advice or talk about experiences to writers who are trying to share, what would you tell them?
I would say that writing and publishing, it's a marathon. It's not a race. Don't expect immediate success. You're gonna have to work for it. But don't give up. I mean, a lot of times we tend to give up too soon when we don't see results and stuff. But if you give up, you'll never reach the finish line. If you continue going, eventually you'll reach the finish line and maybe not what you expect, but you will reach that finish line if you keep going.
Yeah, we we are taught all too often to give up way too early. Well, that didn't work, so obviously it's not the right answer. Well, maybe it was the right answer.
Yeah.
Most people aren't J.K. Rowling, but at the same time, she went through a lot before she started getting her books published. But they're very creative.
Yep. And then
I
now,
would, I would still like to see a new series of Harry Potter books. Well, there is a guy who wrote James Potter, his son, who's written a series.
Mhm.
which is pretty good. But, they're fun.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that's why we like to read them. We like to imagine. We like to, put ourselves in the shoes of, the superhero. And I think that we all kind of, you know, um, feel a connection to those unlikely heroes that aren't perfect. And I think that appeals to a lot of people.
I think it certainly does. I mean, that's clearly a lot of Harry Potter. He was certainly a kid who was different, couldn't figure out why,
Mhm.
and wasn't always well understood, but he worked at it. And that is something that we all can take a lesson to learn.
Exactly. Yes.
So, given everything that goes on with you, if the world feels overwhelming at some point, what kind of things do you do to ground yourself or get calm again?
Well, writing is my self-care. It's my outlet. It's my therapy. Aside from writing, I'm getting back into reading because I'm going to book signing events and talks and such, and everybody's recommending, oh, read this book, and I'm finding some hidden gems out there. So I'm getting back into reading, and that seems to be very relaxing. But I do have to step away from a lot of people sometimes and just be by myself, and I'll put my headphones on and I'll listen to my track. I guess it's not a track anymore, but Spotify, and I'll just go for a walk for an hour, let my mind wander like a video and see where it leads me, and then come back an hour later. And my husband's like, "Oh, where'd you walk?" I was like, "I have no idea, but you should hear the adventures I had."
Yeah, both from what you read and what you thought about.
Yeah, just the things going through my head. And the same thing when I'm writing, I see it as a movie in my head, and I'm just writing down what I see. A lot
Mm.
of times, I'm along for the ride.
Yeah, your characters are writing it and you're just there.
Yeah, yeah. When I'm in the zone, I call those the zone moments, and I won't know what's going to happen until it starts to happen. And I'm writing this out. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. I want to see where this goes, and it'll take me to somewhere where I'm like, wow, that's an amazing scene. How did I think of that? Or on the contrary, it'll take me somewhere, and I'll be like, what is wrong with me? I know that came out of my head, but what is wrong with me? So, it's a double-edged sword.
But write them all down because you never know where you can use them.
Oh, absolutely. I don't delete anything. I
Yeah.
can just rewind and then start again, see where it leads, and it never goes to the same place twice.
That's what makes it fun. It's an adventure. I don't
Yes.
know. I think there's an alien presence here somewhere.
Who knows? Maybe I'm the next step in evolution.
Could be. Or you come from somewhere else, and like I said, they put you down here to figure it out, and they'll come back and get you.
Yeah,
Well,
possibly.
but
You never know. There's so many things we don't understand.
that's true. But all you can do is keep working at it and think about it, and you never know when you'll come up with an answer. Well,
Or a new story.
or another story, right? So keep writing. So clearly, though, you exhibit a lot of resilience in a number of ways. Do you think resilience is something we're born with, or something that we learn, or both?
I think it's a little of both. I mean,
Hmm.
maybe we have a stronger determination or willfulness when we're born, but it can also be a part of our environment. We develop things that we want to do. We develop desires and dreams and stuff, and the combination of the two, the willful resolve and the desire to dream and be better, and I think those two combined will drive us towards our goals.
Now, are your parents still with us?
Yes, yes.
So, what did they think when you were diagnosed as being on the spectrum?
Um, I think my dad was more open to the idea. I don't think my mom believed it, but then she's kind of saying like, oh, okay, maybe. So oddly enough, she was, more open to the idea of me having ADHD than autism. And I just think there was just a lack of understanding. But as time has gone on, I think she sees it not just in me, but I think she sees aspects of that in herself as well. As I've
Well,
been
and in a sense, that's what I was wondering was that they saw you grow up, and in some ways they had to see what was going on, and I was wondering if when you got an answer, if that was really something that helped them, or that they understood.
Yeah, I think so. Although I did internalize a lot of my understandings and misconceptions about life, I internalized it a lot. And I was the annoying cousins because I just, said the inappropriate things at inappropriate times and didn't catch jokes and didn't understand sarcasm. And I was just the oddball one out. But I think now that my mom understands a little bit more about autism and ADHD, she's seeing the signs.
Well, and whether she understood it or not, she had to, certainly as your mom, see that there was something going on.
Well, I don't know. I'm
Whether
the
she
oldest of
verbalized it or not,
5 kids.
or
I
she just
think I
tuned it
kind of
out.
just I think she was working two full-time jobs, raising 5 kids on her own. I think that there just wasn't enough time in the day to notice everything.
Yeah. Well, um, but it's always nice to really get an answer, and
Mhm.
you've accepted this as the answer, and hopefully um, they will accept it as well. So that's a good thing.
Whether or not they accept it is up to them.
That's their
I think,
choice. Yeah.
yeah, it's their choice. Um, the most important thing is that I'm understanding it.
Yeah. Well, and it helps you move forward, which is
Mhm.
which is a good thing.
Yes.
So, do you think that vulnerability is part of resilience?
I think it's important to understand where we're vulnerable. It's like accepting your weaknesses. We all want to improve. We don't want to stay weak and vulnerable. But the only way to improve is to accept those and to understand those and to identify those so that we know where to improve. So I think it is important.
I think it's crucial that we continue to work on our own ideas and attitudes and selves to be able to move forward. And you're right. I think vulnerability is something that we all exhibit in one way or another.
Yeah.
And when we do, is that a bad thing? No, I don't think it should be. I think there are some people who think they're invulnerable to everything, and the
Mhm.
reality is they're not.
I think they call those narcissists.
Yeah, was getting there, but that's exactly the problem, is that they won't deal with issues at all. And
Mm,
so the fact of the matter is that they they cause a lot more difficulty for everyone.
yep.
Of course, they
That,
don't ever think they do, but they do.
that does. Yeah, I mean, if you don't accept the fact that you're not perfect and that you have weaknesses and vulnerabilities, then you're just it turns into you're just either denying it or you're completely ignorant.
How do you balance strength and softness? And because when you're dealing with vulnerability and so on, and it happens, well, how do you bring all of it to balance?
It's the yin and yang, right? The strength keeps you going. The softness keeps you open to accepting and learning.
Yeah, that makes sense. It gives you the opportunity to go back and analyze and synthesize whatever you're thinking.
Yes.
Well, autism is, by the definitions that we face, considered a disability, which is fine. Although my belief is that everybody on the planet has a disability. And for most people, as others have heard me say on this podcast, the disability that most people have is they're light dependent. And they don't do well if suddenly the lights go out until they can find a smartphone or whatever, because the inventors 147 years ago created the electric light bulb, which started us on a road of looking for ways to have light on demand whenever we wanted it and whenever we do want it. But that works until suddenly the light on demand machine isn't directly available to us when light goes away. So I think that light on demand is a lovely thing, but the machines that provide it are only covering up a disability that most people have that they don't want to recognize.
And I'd also argue that the more dependent we become on technology, that the harder it is to adjust to, the way we used to live. If you go to the grocery store, everything's automated. And if the power goes out at the grocery store, nobody knows how to count out change now.
Yeah, they cannot calculate on their own.
Mhm.
I continue to work to be able to do that. So I like to figure things out. People are always saying to me, "How come you got the answer so quickly of how much change or how much to leave for a tip?" I practice.
Yeah.
It's not magical. And the reality is, you don't always have a calculator. And a calculator is just one more thing to lug around. So why have it when you can just learn to do it yourself?
Yeah. Or we have a cell phone which has got everything on it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there is that too. But the thing about all of this is that we all have disabilities, is what I'm basically saying. But if you use disability in sort of the traditional sense, and by that I mean you have certain kinds of conditions that people call a disability, although I will submit absolutely that disability does not mean a lack of ability. But how do societal definitions of disability kind of affect people more than the actual condition itself,
I
whatever
think
it is?
I think society as a whole tend to focus on the negatives and the limitations. And if you focus solely on those, then nobody can see beyond those to what a person can do. Because there's a whole lot out there that people can do. Um, you can learn to adjust to a lot of things. The brain is very malleable,
Hmm.
and we're not just given one sense for one reason. We have five senses, well, arguably more, depending on who you talk
Yeah.
to feel out the world. And same thing with autism is, I mean, I had a hard time. Those things that would come naturally to people, like socializing, learning to speak. Even my son at the playground, he didn't know how to approach kids to ask them to play. But those things can be learned. They just have to spend the time doing it.
Well, and I hear you. Do you think that autism is under the definition a disability?
I think it can be very debilitating.
Yeah.
Um, I think that, and then some people suffer more severe, um, they're more ranges than I do. But I do think that the brain can learn to adjust a lot. Maybe not the same as everybody else, and there will be struggles, and there will be challenges, and there will be anxieties, and things. It is in a way a disability that'll never go away, but I don't think it has to be debilitating.
Struggles and anxieties, but everyone experiences that in one way or another. And that's, of course, the point. Why should some of us be singled out?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I do know though that with there's I guess we would call them an invisible disability because I don't look autistic. I don't look ADHD, but I struggle inwardly. It's a lot more emotional. It's a lot more mental. Analyzing every conversation I've ever had, it's very exhausting and
Hmm.
confusing, and it can lead to other things and stuff that, I mean, I don't think everybody else goes around counting license plates obsessively, adding up numbers on license plates and stuff. And if I don't, it can be very anxiety inducing. I don't think everybody else has to, make notebooks worth of conversations to learn to talk to people, and watch the world around them to try to figure out how to act. I think for a lot of people, it comes naturally. And because I had to learn all those things on my own and stuff, it created a lot more anxiety than another person would have in that area. And life is already chaotic enough,
Yeah.
add more anxiety on top of anxiety and such.
Yeah, but some of that we create ourselves and don't need to. And
Absolutely.
again, it gets back to the fact we all have different gifts. And so
Mhm.
some people are much more socially outgoing, so they can do so many more things that seem like everyone should be able to do them. But again, not everyone has the same gifts.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think that we
Like
need
not
to recognize
everybody,
that.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just like not everybody has the same weaknesses.
Right.
And I think, if we learned to, share the strengths that we have that might overcome somebody else's weaknesses and stuff, it would be a whole lot better place instead of trying to label everybody and segregate everybody based on their limitations. Let's look at their strengths and see which ones coordinate.
Yeah. How does ADHD manifest itself?
It's in a lot of ways very similar to autism, and that's probably why it's now considered part of the autism spectrum. I have a difficult time focusing on things that I don't find intriguing, like oh gosh, if I had to read a social studies textbook, I would go stark raving mad and fall asleep. And I've really hard time staying focused. I'll have to read the same paragraph 20 times. But you give me a textbook on physics, and I'm right in there, and I'll hyper focus for like 12 straight hours, forgetting the world exists, and don't eat, don't sleep, don't move. And I will just immerse myself in that. And then there's a difficult time regulating emotions. So if somebody gets upset about something, for the most part, you can calm yourself down and stuff like that. Um, with autism and ADHD, it's really hard to regulate those emotions and come down from that hyper emotional state down to a normal state. Oh, I think you're still muted.
I can see that in a lot of ways, it can look very similar to autism in terms of the way you're describing it. It makes sense,
Yeah.
which is something one has to deal with. Well, if people stop trying to fix what makes us different, what could we do with the world? How would things be different?
I think the world will be very interesting if we stop trying to fix people and just started trying to accept people and see how, I think that for one, we would also be a lot more open to accepting people, but that would have to come first. And I think that would be amazing because, if we were all the same and we all tried to fit into the same mold, it's going to be a very boring place.
The thing that is interesting about what you just said and the question really is when we try to fix things, why do we need to fix things? What is it that's really broken? And that's, of course, the big issue is that people make assumptions based on just their own experiences rather than looking at other people and looking at their experiences. Is that really broken? And it goes back to like when I talk about blindness.
Yeah.
Am I broken? I don't think so. I do things differently.
Mhm.
If I had been able to see growing up, that would have been nice. But you know what? It's not the end of the world not to. And it doesn't make me less of a person. And you happen to be on the autism spectrum. That's fine. It would be nice if you didn't have to deal with that and you could function and deal with things the way most people do. But there are probably advantages and there's certainly reasons why you are the way you are, why I am the way I am. And so why should that be a bad thing?
I don't think it is. I mean, other than the fact that I would love to be, not have to suffer with the stress and anxieties that I do and the insecurities and the doubt and trying to figure out this world and where I belong and stuff, I like the way my brain works. I like the way I think. Very what if, very out of the box, very creative mindset. And I wouldn't change that for the world.
Yeah. And I think people really should be accepted the way they are. Certainly, there are people who we classify as geniuses because they do something that we didn't think of and it catches on and it's creative. Einstein did it. I mean, for that matter, there's something that Elon Musk has done that has created this vehicle that no one else created successfully before him. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not sure that he's the greatest business guy because I hear that Tesla's not the most profitable company in the world, but that's fine. Or Steve Jobs and Bill Gates created things. Did they do it
Sebastian
all?
Bach.
Sorry?
Sebastian Bach too. I
Yeah.
mean, those prodigies, right?
And they didn't do everything. I understand that Einstein wasn't the greatest mathematician in the world, but he was great at concepts, and he had other people who helped with some of the math that he didn't do. But the reality is, we all have gifts, and we should be able to use those gifts, and other people should appreciate them and be able to add on to what they do. One thing I always told employees when I hired people is my job isn't to boss you around because I hired you because you demonstrated enough that you can do the job I want you to do. But my job is not to boss you, but rather to use my skills to help enhance what you do. So what we need to do is to work together to figure out how I can help you be better because of the gifts that I bring that you don't have. Some
Exactly.
people got that and some people didn't.
Some people are just, they're less, open-minded, I think. I don't know, like less accepting of other people and less accepting of differences. And it's unfortunate, and that creates a lot of problems that, they can't look beyond differences and to see the beauty behind it.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter is that again we're all on the earth in one way or another, and at some point we're going to have to learn to accept that we're all part of the same world, and working together is a better way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do
Yeah.
we get there?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe some idealistic, Star Trek society or utopian society, and maybe in 100 or 200 years we'll get there. But if you think about 100 years ago, if you look at us 100 years ago, and then you think of all the technology that we have today, and that's in like 1 century is not a long time
Mm-mm.
given how long people have been on this planet. And look at all the things we've accomplished technology wise, and look at all the great things that we have done, and it's just imagine how many more or how much more we could do if we worked together instead of working against each other.
Yeah, and that's of course the issue is that we haven't learned yet to necessarily work together. For some people that gets back to narcissism, right? They're the only ones who know anything. What do you do? But yeah, I hear
Yeah.
you. But I think the day is going to come when we're going to truly learn and understand that we're all in this together, and we really need to learn to work together. Otherwise, it's going to be a real serious issue.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that happens sooner than later. Well,
Yes, yeah. I don't think so, but it would be nice to imagine what it would be like if it happened tomorrow. Yeah.
yeah. How much potential do you think is lost not because of limitations, but rather because of how we define them?
I think we use limitations to set our boundaries, but by setting boundaries, we can never see ourselves moving past them, and nor do we try. So I think that setting limitations is hugely detrimental to our growth as you know, creative minds.
I think also, though, limitations are what we often put on other people,
Mhm.
and oftentimes out of fear because somebody's different than us, and we create limitations that aren't realistic. Although we try to pigeonhole people, but the reality is that limitations are also representations of our fears
Mhm.
and our misconceptions about other people, and it's the whole thing of don't confuse me with the facts.
Yes, yeah. And there's like you said, there's these self-limitations, but there's also limitations that we place on other people because we've judged them based on our understanding.
Yeah, and we shouldn't do that
No.
because we probably don't really know them very well anyway. But I do think that we all define ourselves, and we each define who we are, and that gets back to the whole thing of don't judge somebody by what they look like
Yeah,
or what you think about them. Judge people by their actions and give people the opportunity to really work on showing you what they can do.
absolutely. That's definitely a motto by which I've tried to live my life. I honestly don't know everybody out there. I mean, I don't think anybody does. And unless somebody gives me a reason or their behavior says otherwise, I'm going to assume that they're, a good person. I mean, if I assume this person is a good person, but maybe they smack me across the face or take, steal from me and stuff, then I'm going to judge those behaviors.
One of the things that I learned, and we talk about in my book, Live Like a Guide Dog, is dogs, and I do believe this, love unconditionally, unless something really hurts them so that they just stop loving. But dogs love unconditionally, but they don't trust unconditionally. But the difference between dogs and people is, again, unless something truly has been traumatic for a dog, dogs are more open to trust than we are. They don't worry about, well, what's this guy's hidden agenda?
Yes.
Or why is this woman the way she is? The fact is that they're open to trust and they're looking to develop trusting relationships.
Yeah.
And they also want us to set the rules. They want us to be the pack leaders. I'm sure there are some dogs that probably are better than the people they're with, but by and
Yes.
large, the dog wants the person to be the pack leader. They want them to tell the dog what are the rules. So every guide dog I've had, it's all about setting boundaries, setting rules, and working with that dog so that we each know what our responsibilities to the relationship are. And I think absolutely dogs can get that just as much as people do. They're looking for us to set the rules, but they want that. And the fact of the matter is that they get it just as much as we do. And if that relationship really develops the kind of trust that's possible, that's a bond that's second to none.
Yeah.
And we should all honor that. And we could do
Well,
that with each other too. Yeah, there are people who have hidden agendas and people that we can learn not to trust because they don't want to earn our trust either. They're in it for themselves. But I don't think that most people are that way. I think that most people really do want to develop relationships.
yeah. And another aspect of dogs too is they're very humble.
Hmm.
They're, they don't, I mean, they probably do have some, some egos, but for the most part, they're very humble and they don't dwell on the mistakes of their past. They live in the moment, and I love
They
that
do.
about. Yeah,
No, go ahead. They do.
absolutely they do.
One of the things that I learned after September 11th, because I contacted the folks at Guide Dogs for the Blind about it, um, my guide dog was Roselle, and I said, "Do you think this affected her, the whole relationship?" And the veterinarian I spoke with, who was the head of veterinary services at Guide Dogs, asked, "Did anything directly threaten her?" And I said, "No, nothing did." And he said, "Well, there's your answer. The fact is, dogs don't do what if.
Hmm.
They don't worry about what might have been, or even what happened if it didn't affect them. They do live in the moment." When we got home after the events on September 11th, I took Roselle's harness off and was going to take her outside. She would have none of it. She ran off, grabbed her favorite tug bone, and started playing tug of war with our retired guide dog, Linny. It was over
Yeah,
for her. It was done.
it's finished. The journey's done, and I'm living in this moment now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different moment. I'm not going to worry about it. And you shouldn't either, which was the lesson to learn from that.
Yes.
But the reality is that dogs don't do what if. Dogs really want to just do what they need to do. They know the rules. Like I said, they want to know what you expect, and they will deal with that. And by and large, once you set rules, dogs will live by those rules. And if they don't, you tell them that you didn't do that the right way. You don't do that in a mean way. There are
Mhm.
very strong ways of positively telling a dog, yeah, it's not what the right thing was to do. But by the same token, typically that doesn't really happen once they learn the rules. Um, my guide dog Alamo and I, as I tell people with this dog, like any dog, I think it took a really good year before we had developed enough of a trusting relationship that we really knew what each other was thinking and
Mhm.
that we could function seamlessly as a team. And make no mistake, it is all about it being a team. People always say, well, your dog led you down the stairs to get out of the World Trade Center. A lot of the time we couldn't even work the dog in harness because there were too many people on the stairs. So the harness was on her, but she had to walk at heel behind me, and I was holding onto a stair rail because it was the only way to get out.
Mhm.
And the reality is that guide dogs don't lead; they guide. Their job is to make sure that we walk safely, not to know where to go and how to get there.
Exactly. And I mean, how would your dog know to go out of the building? They're looking to us for guidance as much as we are to them.
And not only how to get out of the building, but if you teach a dog a way to get out of a building, what if that way is blocked? And
Yes.
the reality is there were technically four ways to get out of the building, one of which was not available, and that was elevators because there was fire and we knew it. So couldn't use elevators because if fire got in the elevator cars, which it did, that would be the end of anybody in the elevators. The other three ways were three stairwells.
Mhm.
And fortunately, we were 18 floors below where the planes hit, so we were in a good place to be able to get out and did that. But even so, there was a lot of fear on the stairs. And so I needed to keep Roselle focused by constantly praising her and encouraging her and saying, what a good dog. That also helps create more of a trusting relationship because she knows I'm doing okay and I'm not worried about her because I'm telling her what a great job she's doing, just doing the things she does.
I would almost say that that need to calm her down forced you to stay calm.
Correct.
And that helped you that as much as it did her, like that need.
And it helped other people. I've had people who've come up to me years later and said, we entered the stairwell as you were walking by and we followed you down the stairs because you were talking to your dog and you guys were doing great. And if you could, then so could we.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, how has your life experience shaped the way you tell the stories and the kinds of things you talk about? Because I'm sure that has to have an effect.
Yeah, well, like I said, my arcs and my characters' journeys, a lot of it mirrors my own journey through society and through life and stuff. But I mean, I see things and I wonder what ifs. And any situation, I will wonder what ifs, and it gets my
Mm-hmm.
mind going. It keeps my mind moving. Life experience is awesome, and life is awesome. There's a lot of things out there that can spark ideas and creativity, and I do think that when we were talking before about resilience being whether it's built or we're born with it and stuff, and life experience is one of those things that can, help to nurture that resilience.
Yeah. Do you think having a different way of experiencing the world gives you a deeper understanding of character when writing and reading?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm analyzing things a lot more than somebody else who, conversations come easy to them. They wouldn't necessarily analyze every word, every language, every facial feature. So I think that because I have to do that, it allows me to understand my characters and understand that's my way of understanding people is by looking at all these other cues.
Do you think it's a better way or a different way?
I don't think it's better. I think it's just different. It's how
Yeah.
I've managed.
Yeah, and it's just the way you look at things and you've adapted your writing to take advantage of that, which is cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this has really been a lot of fun, needless to say, and I'm glad we had a chance to do it. If people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
They can find everything they need on my website, jmshawauthor.com. I have an email, I have links to my Goodreads, I've got links to Instagram and Facebook, and they can see all of my books there, and there's links to them online as well.
So jmshaw, author.com.
Correct.
I remembered it. Wow, I'm impressed. Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you for being here with us. We really appreciate it. Please, wherever you're experiencing our podcast, give us a 5-star review. We value those very highly. And if you'd like to reach out to me, you can do so by going and emailing me at michaelhi@accessibe.com, michaelhi at accessibe.com, or go to our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And Michael Hingson is spelled michaelhingson.com/podcast. If you know anyone else who ought to be a guest on this podcast, who you think ought to be a guest, they probably should be. And we'd love you to give us an introduction. And Jennifer, that goes true for you as well. If you know anyone, we'd love to get introductions. We're always looking for more people to have on the podcast. But again, I just want to thank you for being here. This has absolutely been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much. I have a lot of fun. I mean, who doesn't want to go and talk about themselves, right?
There you go. It's all about having fun, right?
Yes, absolutely.